Welcome, ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and we are going to be talking about Evolve and essentially my love-hate relationship with the game. I want to say first that I actually originally rented Evolve and then I went out and bought it, and I usually never buy a game that I know that I'm not going to keep going back to continue to play, and if I'm going to want to continue to play it, I must like it, and I do. I really like Evolve. I have learned to love the game. Right now, I love Evolve. It's incredible. Not like Game of the Year incredible, but still a very good game. But there are certain areas in the game that were a little bit frustrating, things that I'm not 100% happy with, but I really want to take time in this video for right now, talk about the really good things that I did like about the game. For those who don't know, Evolve is about one player-controlled monster against four player-controlled hunters. Essentially, the monster is in this map. They're trying to find food to build up their armor and build up a meter so that they can evolve. And once they reach stage 3, they're at their biggest form, they're most formidable, they do the most damage, have the most health, and also have the ability to attack a power relay, assuming you're playing the game mode hunt. Meanwhile, the hunters are trying to track down the monster using a bunch of little clues like footprints and birds, following the breadcrumb trail to eventually finding the monster and fighting it and hopefully killing it before it can destroy the power relay or killing all of the hunters. But the thing that I really like about this game is the level of thought that goes into it. For example, the monster, they're going to leave a lot of tracks, but when they sneak and go into the stealth mode, they don't leave tracks behind. And a lot of times the monsters, I do this all the time actually, they'll go one way and then sneak back up and go another way. So that when the hunters come down, they're going to follow the tracks and be like, oh, he went that way, and then they're going to go a completely different way. In the meantime, the monster's trying to avoid these flocks of birds. Occasionally when they kill things, they're going to attract carnivorous birds or carrion birds. I call them carnivorous birds because that makes more sense, but they call them carrion birds, and I got confused a little bit. But you kill certain things, you feed on them, sometimes it's going to attract birds, and then they'll start circling above. Every time you scare a flock of birds or attract birds, the hunters get a ping and they're like, oh, he's over there. But there's no guarantee that the monster is going to be there when you get to that location. It's just generally saying, oh, I'm over here right now. I'm probably not going to be here by the time you get here, but here's a general location for you. Not to mention corpses of dead bodies that the monster has fed on. You know the monster has been here, following the tracks and things like that. There are so many things you have to do as the hunters to try and track down the monster. But then the hunters also have other abilities, other characters, because there's a total of 12 total hunters. Essentially, the hunters are four main classes: the medic, the trapper, the assault, and the support. But each of those classes has three other hunters that have different types of abilities. Each class has one ability that carries over with all the characters. For example, the medics all have a heal burst that will heal themselves and anybody else around them. The trappers have their mobile arena, which is like a shield dome that can trap the monster and sort of force the fight. But every different type of hunter, every different character has their own little set of abilities that makes them very situational. For example, one of the other game modes is rescue. This requires the hunters to go and evacuate 5 survivors while the hunter tries and kills 5 survivors. But the survivors are incapacitated when you first see them, so the hunters have to revive them, and then they have to take them to this area where the drop ship is going to come in and evacuate them. And a character that's really useful in rescue is Lazarus. Lazarus is a character that is able to revive the dead back to life. So it's really useful when one of the survivors dies and here comes Lazarus who brings them back from the dead. I was really annoyed as the monster when I first figured out that Lazarus was able to revive people from the dead, because I was like, didn't I kill that guy? But then there's also Bucket. Bucket has the ability to throw down these turrets, and in the other game mode, Nest is a game mode in which the hunters try to destroy 6 eggs while the monster is trying to defend them, but it can also hatch an egg to get like a little monster minion that'll go after the hunters. But Bucket is really useful in this game mode because a lot of the times when you're playing with other people, the 3 hunters are going to go one direction, Bucket's going to go off on his own and attack some of the other eggs. One of the things that I love to do is throwing down the turrets all around the egg, knocking it out, because there's like this armor around the egg, and then when you break that off, you can do a lot of damage to the actual egg itself. So after you throw down all the turrets, you basically knock off all the armor, and then the turrets will continue to attack it, so you move on to another one while the turrets destroy that one egg. Since implementing that strategy, I have never lost a game of Nest. I'm going to probably go home now, play Nest, and lose now that I've said that, but it's a good strategy to have. But a lot of these characters are really situational. They all have their own unique abilities. Some of them just, you really need to know how to play your class, which is the other thing too, and this kind of is going to lead a little bit into the kind of negative side of Evolve, because the medic needs to realize that while you do have a sniper rifle that can actually create a weak point on the monster, your main role as the medic is to make sure that we, as your teammates, are healed. As a support, you need to be backing up your teammates, hitting your friends with a shield if you're Hank, or hitting the monster with double damage if you're Cabot, using a UAV if you're Bucket to try and locate the monster. Trappers need to make sure that they're getting down down that mobile arena, but they're not wasting it, because a lot of times the trappers will throw down a mobile arena, but the monster will be out of range, so by the time the shield actually comes down, the monster's actually on the outside of it. Then the trapper has to wait for that thing to reload and recharge before he can use it again. Because the trappers are also very useful with helping track down the monster. Maggie, I think, is one of the best classes to use when you're trying to track down the monster because of Daisy. Daisy is a trap jaw that basically sniffs out the monsters, doesn't really tell you exactly where the monster is, but will give you an indication of like, okay, the tracks are leading this way, but Daisy's going that way. So maybe we should go that way. Because again, the monster could have laid down false tracks so that you would get distracted, but the monster actually went that way, and Daisy sniffed them out. But then there's Griffin. Griffin will put down these sound spikes, and then when the monster goes through a certain area of the map, it'll set off a ping, which will allow the hunters to go after it. And then Abe has his dart gun. He can hit wildlife, so if the monster feeds on that specific wildlife, he'll get tracked, or if you hit the monster itself, it'll get tracked. So many things need to be in your head when you're playing Evolve. You need to understand the role that you are, and if one person's off, it's probably going to throw off the entire team. Because like I said before, you're going to at times get that medic that would rather snipe than heal. You're going to get that trapper that doesn't throw down the mobile arena, and that's when the game gets frustrating. When your teammates aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you're trying to help fight and win, it gets frustrating, because when one person's off, it throws off the entire chemistry, and it destroys any chances of you actually winning. Meanwhile, the monster is getting away, feeding on wildlife, reaching stage 2, reaching stage 3, and then by the time you have to go back to defend against the power relay, the monster is like, has almost no damage and will basically annihilate you. But it goes both ways. Like, it's not just frustrating with the hunter, sometimes it's frustrating as the monster. As the monster, there were times where I felt like the hunters were always right behind me. They were always pestering me, hitting me with fire so that I couldn't feed on creatures. And it'd be early on too. Like, I would sneak immediately once I started the game so that when the hunters drop down, they have no idea which direction to go. And then meantime, I'm feeding, building up armor, building up experience so that I can evolve and build up even more of my abilities. But it's really annoying sometimes when the hunters are always right there. No matter how far you jump and get across the other side of the map, the hunters are boop, here we are. Yes, the game does get frustrating, and yes, the game does get a little bit repetitive as well. Because there is only 4 major game modes in this game. There's Hunt, which is the showcase, which is like the headlining game mode of this game. Then there's Rescue, there's Nest, and then there's Defend. Defend is a game mode in which the hunters try to defend certain points against a stage 3 monster and other respawning monster minions. And when your team is communicating, that game mode can be fun. And as the monster, once again, it can get pretty frustrating because I don't think I've ever won that game mode as the monster. So on top of the game getting frustrating and also maybe a little bit repetitive, that was when early on I was like, maybe this game isn't all that special. But once I started unlocking the other hunters, once I started unlocking the different monster types, the game really started to click. Right now I love this game because of the amount of thought that goes into it. You can't pick up this game and play mindlessly. No, you gotta pay attention to the signs, pay attention to the tracks, to the corpses, to the birds. And as the monster, you gotta think cunningly. You gotta put false tracks so it will divert the hunters. You gotta go into sneak mode waiting for that hunter to come around and then ambush him right away. And when I start talking about the different strategies that are employed with certain hunter characters, the same thing can be said for the monster types. Because as the Goliath, you have the most amount of armor. He's the person who's gonna be in the action, meleeing dudes left and right, throwing rocks and breathing fire. But as the Kraken, by the way, I want to take a side note and say that I have, for whatever reason, in every video that I've done of Evolve, I've been referring to the Kraken as Leviathan for some reason. But I was playing with a friend online and then I kept saying Leviathan and I was like, oh yeah, I like playing the Leviathan. And he goes, what? You mean the Kraken? I'm like, oh. I don't know, it was just something that I noticed. I thought it was funny. I'm an idiot. Whatever. Moving on. But the Kraken is a little bit more with the range attacks. It will fly up and shoot down these bolts. It can summon lightning and damage hunters in a certain area. It has these Banshee mines that it can put down in order to get away from the hunters. So instead of being right up in the action like the Goliath would, the Kraken is a little bit more ranged, attacking things from afar. And then there's the Wraith. I love playing the Wraith, but I don't like playing it too much because I know that as the hunter, I hate when people play the Wraith. As a matter of fact, I think the only time I have ever actually beaten the Wraith as the hunter is when I was playing it with an AI. I absolutely hate when people play the Wraith back to back to back to back to back. Because essentially, that is the easiest class to play. If you want to win as the monster, play as the Wraith if you're not very good. But when you do it so much, it gets, again, we're going to go back to this level of frustration. The Wraith is really overpowered because, like I said before, I've never beaten it other than the fact that it was controlled by an AI once. But whenever it's controlled by a player, it's an easy win. So when I play as the Wraith, I'll do it once and then I'll switch it out with the Kraken or the Goliath. Only because I know that, like, alright, well, I played it once, I'm done, I've had my fill, now I'm going to go play something else to give the hunters an actual shot at beating me. But the Wraith is a little bit more like sneaky. It has like this ability to throw out a decoy that can actually do damage to the hunters. It can abduct a target, be it a creature in the wild or actually one of the hunters. I can't tell you how many times where I was like sneaking when I was playing on rescue as the Wraith, and then I'm seeing a survivor that is with all the other hunters, and I abduct them and pull them away from the rest of the group, which allows me to go into like this frenzy of supernova that I'm able to strike and kill them easily. The Wraith is really fun, but once again, I don't like playing him too much because I know that people don't like playing against the Wraith. But the gameplay with the Kraken, the gameplay with the Wraith, the gameplay with the Goliath, it's all different types of tactics that you can use. But one of the other really cool game modes that I really enjoy is actually Evacuation. Evacuation has a combination of all of the game modes, which is Hunt, Nest, Rescue, and Defend. It takes all those game modes, it puts it in this one, and it has you play throughout 5 missions. Essentially, Evacuation is basically the campaign mode for Evolve. The story of Evolve is that you're on this planet of Sheer. It's a colony planet, but now the monsters are attacking the colonists, so hunters have been called in to evacuate. So over the course of 5 days, the hunters are going to try and evacuate the colonists and try to kill the monsters. The first mission, the first day, is always going to be a hunt, and then people can vote on whether or not they're going to play Rescue, Hunt, or Nest for the next 3 days. And then the 5th day is a Defend, because that's when the ship is coming in and evacuating all remaining survivors, and you basically have to defend the power source that is feeding power to the ship. At least as the hunters anyway, because the monsters are coming and they're going to try to destroy it. But what's really cool about Evacuation is that whoever wins, whether if it's the monster on day 1, the monster will gain an advantage in the next map. So for example, on some maps, if the hunters win, there will be like a gas that will prevent the monster from being able to smell. But on that same map, if the monster wins, water will be contaminated, which will cause the wildlife to be more aggressive toward the hunters. I really like how each map has this effect that feeds into the next map and the next mission. And it's just really cool. It's just like it adds that dynamic. It adds like that wild card that has to be thought about when you're playing throughout the game. But I also like how the game doesn't necessarily require you to speak to other players. The game has built in other mechanics that will allow you to get your point across. By hitting one of the thumbsticks, you'll actually put out a point of interest, which will basically tell all of your other friends that, oh, okay, there's something over here that we need to be paying attention to. And the color will change depending on what you're targeting. If it's nothing, it's going to be yellow. If it's a creature, it's going to be orange. And if it's a monster, it's going to be red. So a lot of times people won't have a microphone, but they will be hitting that mark button to let you know, hey, the monster's over there. And I've actually seen people use it to be like, once the monster reaches stage 3, then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to put a bunch of points over in the direction that the power relay is, because I think we need to get over there and start defending. Which is another thing too, is that I love how the game, first of all, Evolve is so properly named, not just because of the fact that the monster can actually evolve, but because of the way the game evolves as it progresses. And here's what I mean, like at the start of every game, the monster is at stage 1. It's at its smallest, weakest form, really will get ripped apart by the hunters if it gets caught really early. So the monster is going to try and run away, keep away from the hunters as much as possible, feed when it can, but feeding on the move, never really staying in one place for too long, because then that gives the hunters the ability to catch up. But at stage 2, the monster is a little bit more able to handle himself. He's able to fight. If he gets trapped in the mobile arena, it's not the worst thing in the world. I've actually won games as a stage 2 monster, but at stage 3, you are at your biggest form, you're doing the most damage, you have the most health, you are at your most formidable. Then the game shifts from the hunters hunting the monster to possibly the monster hunting the hunters. Not to mention the whole defending the power relay. The game becomes more of like a defend mode. So the hunters go from offense to defense, and they're trying to defend the power relay while also being very wary and hopefully never really seeing the monster, because the monster is probably going to be really hard to take down. But then depending on how much damage you did to the monster before it hit stage 3, because every time the monster evolves, it's going to gain more total health, but it's not going to regenerate what it already lost. I mean, there is a mode in Evacuation that will have like these plants that the monster can feed on to regenerate that health, but in normal game mode, they wouldn't be able to do that. But essentially, I love how much thought went into this game, how much the game evolves, and how much there's, like, yes, it's frustrating at times, but that's overpowered by how much fun I've been having recently. Like, I've recently unlocked all the hunters and all the monsters, so I've just been playing around with some that I've never really played before and figuring out, okay, what is my preference? Which classes do I like to use? Which character do I like to use? Playing with friends on my friends list and just being like, hey, guys, let's just mess around and we'll just go and attack things and just have a good time. Because this is a game that is great when playing with friends. It's just that communication. You guys laugh when something goes wrong. You laugh when something goes right. It's just a fun game to play. In a lot of ways, Evolve is like Titanfall when it first launched. Like a very fun game, but not a whole lot of game modes to speak of, so it can get repetitive very quickly. It can get frustrating at times, and there's a campaign mode that doesn't necessarily have to be there, but it's there. I mean, these are two very different games, but the idea is still the same. It's just like the game knows exactly what it is. It knows what fan base to target, and I feel like maybe Titanfall did its job a little bit better, but Evolve kind of didn't do a bad job either. I don't think Evolve's going to win Game of the Year, but it's definitely a game that's worth a look. I mean, at the very least, borrow it from a friend, rent it, play it, and if you like it, go out and buy it, because it's worth playing. It's worth being one of those games to be like, all right, I want to waste some time. Maybe I got about 20 minutes. Let's put in Evolve and play a match. And it seems like these are the kind of games that I actually like. It's going to be that game that, okay, maybe playing it back to back to back to back to back isn't the smartest idea, but it's one of those games to be like, all right, well, it's been 3 weeks. Let's put in Evolve and play that. All right, that's great. I'll see you in the next 3 weeks. Evolve, while frustrating, and I've punched a lot of things while playing Evolve, I do really like this game. I do really enjoy my time playing it, and I like how the game doesn't treat me like an idiot. It makes me want to think smarter, be a little bit more strategic, and I love games that make me think that way. So Evolve is really good, and that's where I'm going to end it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.